I'm currently preparing to head out of the country this week with Caitlin and to go to a place that I've never been. And this got me thinking about the fact that as much as I love going to new places, it's easy to feel disconnected, a stranger in a foreign land. And then I realized how many of us live as strangers in our own lives. If you've been following along, we've named something important. We've named the connection crisis, not as a personal failure, but as a lived reality many of us are navigating every single day. We've named the two forces that are driving it, the defect dilemma, the belief that something is wrong with us, and the disconnect dilemma, the loss of meaningful connection with ourselves and others. And we've looked honestly at what happens when these two forces collide. When we feel alone and broken, we don't sit still. We reach. This episode is about what we're reaching for, why it isn't working the way we hope, and what actually does. The problem isn't reaching, it's how we're reaching. Before we go any further, this matters. Reaching isn't the problem. Reaching is human. When our nervous system is overwhelmed, when connection feels unavailable, when we don't know how to be with what we're feeling, of course we reach for relief. The issue isn't that we're reaching. The issue is what we've been taught to reach for. Over time, two dominant strategies have emerged as the default responses to emotional discomfort, loneliness, and internal instability. They're not evil, they're not stupid, they're understandable. But they are non-solutions. Not because they never help, but because they don't build capacity. The first non-solution is state management through the screen. Phones, social media, endless content streaming, algorithms, and AI. On the surface, this looks harmless, even helpful. We scroll to relax, we watch to unwind, we search for answers, we ask questions, we look for reassurance. And in the moment, it often works. We feel calmer, less alone, and more oriented. But here's the key distinction most conversations miss. Something can regulate you without training you. Screens are very good at managing our state. They distract us from discomfort, they soothe us through stimulation, and they offer explanation without vulnerability. But they don't teach us how to stay present with ourselves, and over time, that matters. There's a hidden cost of screen-based regulation. When we spend a large portion of our waking hours responding to external stimulus, a few subtle things begin to happen. We become less practiced at feeling sensations in our body. We lose our fluency with our emotional signals, and then we rely on interpretation instead of perception. Instead of noticing something feels off in me right now, we ask, what does this mean? What's wrong with me? And what should I do about it? The screen becomes a mediator between us and our inner world. And mediation always creates distance. This becomes especially problematic when screens begin to replace emotional processing, relational repair, intuition, and self-trust. When that happens, something essential weakens, our inner authority. We don't lose it overnight, we outsource it gradually. And the more we outsource it, the harder it becomes to feel grounded without something external telling us how to feel. The second non-solution is state management through substance. This includes pharmaceuticals, alcohol, cannabis, and increasingly plant medicine and psychedelics. This needs to be said clearly. This is not about demonizing substances. In specific contexts, under professional guidance, substances can be very useful tools. But tools become problems when they're used as a replacement for skill. When regulation is external, capacity stays underdeveloped. Substances work by changing our internal state for us. They calm, they elevate, they numb, and they open. And for someone in pain, that can feel like relief, sometimes profound relief. But here's the question most people never ask. What happens when the substance is gone? If we haven't learned how to regulate ourselves without it, the relief doesn't translate into capacity. It simply resets the cycle. We feel better temporarily, then life happens. The nervous system gets activated again, and we reach again. This is where the plant medicine panacea shows up. Not because the medicine is inherently wrong, but because it's being asked to do something that it can't do. Teach us how to live. Understand that insight isn't integration. One of the most seductive aspects of substance-based work is insight. We see things clearly. We understand our patterns. We feel connected. But insight alone doesn't create change. Integration does. And integration requires skills. Emotional regulation, presence under pressure, nervous system literacy, relational repair. Without those, insight becomes information, not transformation. And information without training fades. So what do these two non-solutions have in common? On the surface, screens and substances look very different, but underneath, they're doing the same thing. They manage our inner state from the outside. They stabilize us temporarily. They reduce discomfort. They help us cope, but they don't build the internal capacity required to stay present with emotion, remain regulated during conflict, trust our internal signals, and repair relationships in real time. They help us survive moments. They don't teach us how to relate. And that's why, despite all our tools, content, medicine, and information, the connection crisis keeps deepening. Okay, so if the answer isn't managing ourselves through screens or managing ourselves through substances, then what does work? There is a third path. I call it state management through self. Not in a vague way, not in a motivational way, in a trainable way. Here's what state management through self actually means. State management through self means developing the ability to notice what's happening internally in real time, regulate emotional activation without suppressing it, stay present under pressure, recover quickly after being triggered, choose consciously designed responses instead of unconscious reactions. This isn't about being calm all the time. It's about capacity. The capacity to stay connected to yourself, especially when it's hardest. And here's the part most people don't realize. This is not a personal trait. It's not talent. It's not willpower. It's training. At the core of my methodology is a simple but often overlooked truth. Emotion drives and directs the mind. The mind then fuels and amplifies the emotion, and then together, emotion and mind inspire action. And repeated actions create outcomes over time. Every outcome in our lives, relational, professional, physical, can be traced back to an emotional driver. If we don't name that driver, we can't train it. And if we don't train it, we keep recreating the same outcomes no matter how much we understand ourselves. This is why trying to think our way out of emotional patterns rarely works. When emotion is dysregulated, the mind doesn't get a vote. You can know exactly what you should think and still not be able to access it when it matters. That's why so many people say, I don't understand this. I just can't get myself to do it in the moment. The issue isn't intelligence. It isn't insight. It's regulation. Here's why emotion comes first. Emotion isn't the enemy of clarity. It's the gateway to it. Emotion is the operating system underneath thought. When emotion is trained, the mind becomes an ally instead of an amplifier of fear, reactivity, or avoidance. When emotion isn't trained, the mind spins, analyzes, justifies, and escalates. This is why my work doesn't start with mindset. It starts with training emotional drivers. Because when the emotional driver changes, behavior changes naturally. And when behavior changes consistently, outcomes change. Now, as I've shared, this isn't theoretical for me. I found myself deeply disconnected in real and profound pain, searching for something that would finally fix me. I tried substances, I tried spiritual experiences, I tried insight, and while some of it helped temporarily, nothing changed my baseline. What changed everything was learning how to work with what was happening inside me in real time without bypassing it. Learning how to feel without being overwhelmed, stay present under pressure, regulate my nervous system, and trust my internal signals. That training didn't just change how I felt, it changed how I showed up in relationships, under stress, in competition, and in life. It took me from choking under pressure to becoming a 3-time world champion martial artist. Not because I wanted it more, but because I was regulated enough to access what I already had. At the center of my work is this: connection is a function of regulation. When we're regulated, connection is natural. When we're dysregulated, connection is difficult, even with people that we love. So the work isn't about fixing ourselves. It's about training ourselves. Training emotion, training focus, training nervous system response. So we don't have to outsource stability, clarity, or connection. When you can manage your state through yourself, relationships stop feeling so fragile. Conflict becomes workable instead of threatening. Loneliness loses its grip. Self-trust begins to return, not because life gets easier, but because you get steadier. This is how we resolve the connection crisis. Not by numbing it, not by bypassing it, but by rebuilding relationship with ourselves from the inside out. In the next episode, I'll share something more personal. I'll walk you through my own journey, how I ended up here, what I tried that didn't work, and how this methodology actually emerged. Not as a business plan, not as a brand strategy, but because clients kept asking me for something that didn't exist yet. And the demand for this work grew organically, one person at a time, and I'll share the moments that shaped the work. Why it became meaningful to me long before it became professional, and how the methodology evolved through real-world application, not theory, and why relationship became the ultimate proving ground for everything that I was learning. Episode 4 is about how this work was forged through lived experience, failure, pressure, and service, and why that matters. But for now, I want to leave you with this. If the things you've been reaching for haven't worked the way you hoped, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means you were never taught the missing skill, and skills can be learned. Thank you for your feedback on the last couple of episodes. I've gained some important insights about what's present and living for you, and I'll be sure to address those themes in future episodes. In the meantime, if you're willing to continue to share, drop a comment and tell me this. When things feel hard, which do you find yourself reaching for more often, screens or substances? And what do you notice happens after the relief wears off? Anything that you want to share with me, I'm here for it. Even just the word screens or the word substances, more if you'd like to share. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time and letting me know where you are. If you found this video helpful or interesting, please like it, follow, and subscribe to get notified when a new video is available. You'll also find some useful links and resources below. And with that, I'll sign off for now. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I look very forward to connecting with you again next week.